bad paper doll, how they want you. Counting on the days to help you forget. Make it taking on me to back you down, 'cause life's marching on, it's not waiting around. So get up, get off it and break some ground. Make your own revolution.
Have you ever wondered how to have the mindset to accomplish all of your goals and come out a winner? Well, we're going to find out tonight with my great guest, Dom Brighton. Hi, I'm Connie Bramer, and I am the founder of Get Your Rack Back, a nonprofit that helps cancer patients in the upstate New York region. I'm also the host of your show tonight, Laughter and Inspiration. A lot of people ask me about my foundation, and right now with the pandemic, like, we're not doing anything, which I'm very sad about for our patients. So if you'd like to learn more about my foundation, you can go to gyrb.org. That stands for Get Your Rack Back. And we kind of renamed it GYRB because there's a misnomer. We help all cancer patients, men, women, and children with all types of cancers, not just breast cancer, which a lot of people think because of my book, How Connie Got Her Rack Back, which is how I know Dom. So I want to introduce you to Dom Brighton, and I want to make sure I read these right, Dom, because I screw stuff up all the time. He is the author of Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself. And this is the tongue twister one. I can't even say it. Stay the Course, the Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. He's also the host of the Going North podcast. And I love that name because I always think of going north as being something positive. Because when in my business, I'm in the automotive industry, and in business in general, when you say, this deal went south, like in my dad's terminology, it basically went to shit, right? So is that why you came up with Going North?
In a way, yeah. It actually started off as a joke. That's the funny part about it.
That's good. Well, welcome to the show. I forgot to say that. Welcome to the show, Dom. I'm glad you're here.
Oh, glad to be with you, Connie. Indeed, we get to complete the first 2 out of the 3 letters of the alphabet. This is going to be good.
Yeah. So I have to tell everybody how I met you. So I met Dom, I think it was last year, because I wrote a story in the book Chaos to Clarity, and it was released in 2019. So I was doing a bunch of interviews, and I met Dom, and he's just such a great energy. And I wanted to have him on the show. I was excited when I started to do my own podcast. Dom and I, ironically, are in the same book, and that's going to be released in the fall of 2020, called Crappy to Happy. And I really can't wait to read your story, because I will tell you in a brief gist, my story I wrote about my mom. And I wrote about how we used to lie to my dad about how much things cost. So it was like a game. My whole, I don't want to say childhood. It was more like when I became a teenager. My mom and I would go shopping, and we both have a penchant for shopping, and my Visa card is not happy about that. But anyway, we would go shopping, and we would buy stuff, and we would tell my dad, if it was 100, we would say it was 75. And he would flip out. He'd be like, Jesus, I can't believe you spent $75 on that. And meanwhile, it's 100. And my mother and I are going, if only he knew the truth. So when my mom passed away, so it'll be 25 years soon, he did not know how much anything cost. He probably thought he could go get a shirt for $20. And then when he goes to get a dress shirt and it's 50, he's probably like, what happened? Inflation, but we lied to him for years. So I kind of wrote my story about that and my love for my mom and some journeys we went about together. So I'm interested to hear what you're going to write yours about. Did you care to give us a little snippet?
Sure thing. Sure thing. A little tease, yes indeed. A tease without the feathers, but my main story, that's a visual for you, right?
No kidding. Oh my God. Okay, continue.
But yeah, definitely. Mine actually did involve parents as well, because I talked a little bit about both of my parents, my mother and my father as well, and how basically they helped me to have a good upbringing. But as with good upbringing is when you go into the real world and you try to make stuff happen, you're eventually going to run into a wall, and then there's a landmine that you dodge before getting tackled by a shadow of Ray Lewis. So really just taking
That's true.
a little bit of that. Yeah, it's just really about how setbacks are really just a step forward and setting you back for a story forward. So that's really just a little taste of it, because no matter how good some may have in life, we're all going to have days where we're going to be feeling off and feeling bad, and
That's
tapping
right.
into what brings us true happiness.
Well, you've been like, I could go on and on with your accolades because you have so many things going for you right now. And I guess the one thing that I wanted to ask you, because, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, I've read some snippets of your books, and they all point in a direction of positivity, which I think we all could use in our lives right now. And with the pandemic going on right now, I know a lot of people have been struggling, not only financially because they may have lost their job, or, financially because you've got 2 college kids at home like me, like eating you out of house and home, having to be stuck inside. And I know we're like opening back up and we're all on a slower trajectory. And then some states are having issues, so they're closing. So I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on how we can all be more positive and gain something from self-reflection during this time that we're all kind of holed up and thinking? What would you say to that?
Sure thing, because it's definitely an interesting time. It's like, yay, we're open again. Oh, crap, we got to close again. It's too soon, pull back. But really, in this time where some folks have to pull back, I mean, really, to just skill up is one of the biggest things you can do for yourself. I know there's 2 camps of thought here with the whole pandemic. If you still have at least a way to live, there's the camp of, hey, if you don't come out of this pandemic with a book, a new idea, or that business, then you wasted your time. But then there's this other camp where it's like, hey, it's A-okay. This is a pandemic. No one's been through a pandemic like this before. And it's so true, because this is a modern pandemic, where as opposed to the 20s, when they had that evil flu that was out there, where we didn't have DoorDash and all these other items, we didn't have the internet, even though residential internet can be your enemy at times when doing these Zoom meetings, is the fact that we still have opportunities to make things happen. So basically finding a way to turn your lemons to lemonade, and then selling your lemonade, and heck, even at least packaging it so that way folks can actually dive into it. And that's really one of the biggest things that you can do to stay positive during this pandemic, is finding out, okay, people are sick, yes, people are dying, yes, but I wish them nothing but the best, especially the families that have lost loved ones during this time, because it's hard to lose loved ones, period. But during a pandemic where you can have no more than 10 people attend a funeral, it's even worse.
Yeah.
So realizing that you're still alive and you have a reason to still live, and to basically up your skills in something that you want to do. And heck, even it doesn't even have to be upping your skills, just be reading books that have been on your bookshelf, classifying themselves as self-help, helping your shelves to become bigger on steroids, as opposed to self-help as a helping yourself to become better.
I like that. Well, you bring up an interesting point, because I'm mad at myself, and I have to I decided I need to cut myself a little slack, because I had all this time at home. I was working kind of remotely, but my industry pretty much came to a halt for a bit. So I thought to myself, this was my perfect opportunity to work on book number 2, or, you and I both write for Biz Catalyst 360, the online digest. I didn't write a single article, and I felt like I'm wasting this time. And for many people, I know that myself, I was glued to the news for a month. And after a month, I really was it was getting to the point where I was having I don't want to say panic attacks, but I had full on anxiety. And then I decided I'm not going to watch the news anymore. I need to be productive. So my productivity was not so much in the creative vein, which I would have liked to have it been, but instead, I painted my bedroom, which hadn't been done because I'm kind of in a new house. I painted this office, and I found this really cool tapestries to make me look like I'm at the beach, which is one of my favorite places, but I'm not there right now. And, I just last weekend, I painted the kids' bathroom. So I've become like Bob Vila, the female,
Nice.
the female version of Bob Vila. I can't fix anything, but I can paint. So I've been doing that, but like we both write for Biz Chaos 360, and Dennis Potoko is the publisher and owner of the magazine. He's really extremely amazing. And he's also in the Chaos to Clarity book. I believe he's also in our next book, the Crappy to Happy book, which you guys can go on Amazon and pick up either one of those books up. The Crappy to Happy will be out in the fall. But I reached out to Dennis and I said, I'm really sorry that I haven't written anything. I said, I feel like I've just had like this huge writer's block. And usually like in my life, I don't know if you're like this, but just daily life, I find funny things that crack me up. And that's what I tend to gravitate towards writing about.
Nice.
And then when you're sitting home, like you're not having like interactions with people. So there's no way, there's not like the material's not there. Like I find that when life is normal and we're like going with the speed of life, like funny things jump out at me. I'm like, oh boy, I got to write about that, but nothing was happening. So I didn't. So he told me, he goes, why don't you start with, writing about you can write about the pandemic a little bit. So one of the articles I just wrote, what did I call it? Riddle Me That One. I wrote a little bit about, in the end, about like, I picked like a few things that were from the pandemic, just a few hot spot points, whatever. And I talked about, the most burning question of the whole pandemic is, who killed Carol Baskin's husband from the Tiger, did you see that? The Tiger King? Did you ever watch that? It's like,
I've heard about it.
and literally, it's like a train wreck that you can't like avert your eyes from. It's 6 hours of your life you'll never get back. But I mean, I think it'll make you feel really good about yourself. Like even if you're like down in the dumps and you're like, oh, my life's not going so well. When you see this and you see the mullet and the highlighted mullet and who killed who, I mean, and the tiger, the bones, and is it this husband because there's bones in the tiger cage, it'll get you thinking. But it's a little humor. You got to have a little humor. So, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, because I found this really interesting about you, is that you are a motivational speaker with John Maxwell, on the John Maxwell team. And that to me is like the height of motivational speaking. So how did that come about for you?
Yes, that came about through a couple friends in Toastmasters a few years ago in, I think it was like 2015 or whatever. And I saw somebody had this John Maxwell standing thing. The word escapes me now, but their face was on it said John Maxwell team. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Because I read John Maxwell's books, they changed my life. Ever since 2013, my year of rebirth, it's been one heck of a ride. He's my favorite author of all time. And I didn't know that there was a leadership certification that he had. I mean, it only makes sense. He's the leading authority on leadership. That's his topic. And he's darn good at it. And really just being a part of the team is being a part of his legacy legs. And there's about a good 30,000 coaches across the globe. And he has a huge amount of coaches out in the Paraguay area, as well as Romania,
really?
And even parts of Mexico too. Yeah, it's huge. It's a multi-million-dollar company too. And it's really just, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm in a role-playing game and I got this ultimate sword and I can get to swing it around and train with it and have this ultimate level of power now, because it's really just adding on to what I already do. Because before joining the team, I was already a competent level speaker, good if I say so myself, and really had
definitely good, really good, really good.
Like a bunch, and had 2 books already, but just really doing this, so basically add another layer to that, and really being in the community with other like-minded individuals who want to be the best versions of themselves, because the main premise of the Maxwell team is to add value to more people. And there's this, and I kind of hate the fact that values become a little bit of a buzzword nowadays, that folks be like, yeah, let me give this value to you and all this other good stuff. But one of the best ways to, quote unquote, give value to people is by helping them unlock their own inner value. Like yourself, Connie, you took your breast cancer, you kicked its butt, you became this awesome writer, cranking out all these blogs, finding the humor in everything, and creating one of my freaking favorite book titles ever, How Connie Got Her Rack Back, because when I checked you out before we talked, I'm like, oh God, this interview is going to be funny. And you didn't disappoint. So
good, thanks.
Just stuff like that, just really helping folks to discover their own value. And heck, even that's what people have done for me, mentors and coaches and things like that. They've helped me to accelerate growth faster than I would have been on my own because they saw that I had potential and I can tap into that potential. And someone just had to come in and just take off that little kettle lid that was on me and then let the steam out. That way it can expand and become even bigger of a kettle pot and give more coffee to people.
I love that. And, you know, one thing that you kind of mentioned is being with like-minded people. And I think there's very powerful in being with like-minded people like John Maxwell, motivational speaker type people. You know, you end up in this, I hate this term, but like a layer of people that are of your same mindset that want to do better. And I think that, you know, people like you and I who try to do things for people are what we really need to be doing, which you're already doing, is lifting people up to be with us. You know, like I was having a conversation with someone a couple of days ago about negativity and how it takes so much more energy to be negative than it does to be positive. And I think one of the things I get from all of your podcasts, because I've listened to quite a few, and because I like to do my homework too, you know, I think that I think the big thing is that, you know, there is a dynamic of positivity with everything that you talk about. And I think that's missing a lot in the world right now. I mean, we're going through a really difficult time. And, you know, like, for instance, you were talking about the pandemic being in the 1920s. My kids, okay, are 18 and 19, both in college. And yeah, it's been hard for them. Like, they're going back to college in the fall, not knowing what to expect. It's going to be a really bizarre experience for them. But imagine, like, I was born, you know, in 1969. So yeah, I'm old. But so I was a kid in the 70s. There was like, we had 3 TV stations and we had, you know, rabbit ears on our TV, or actually in a big tree by our house. And when we had it on the TV, we had foil on it, right? And then the remote was, my dad would say, "Hey, Connie, get up." And I'd be like, yeah, what? And he'd say, "Go turn the channel." And we had like 6, 10, 13. And then when we got like Fox, it was 23. It was like the biggest deal ever. You know, we had to wait till Saturday mornings for cartoons. We looked forward to the ABC after school special that came on like maybe once a month. We watched like Disney at night on Sundays. We had to be at bed at 8:00. Like, these kids right now live in such a world of instant gratification that they can't even comprehend. Like, if this pandemic had taken place in the 70s or the 80s, or my God, like even in the early 90s, I don't know when the internet was invented by you know, Mr. Gore, but but that's his claim to fame. But anyway, they don't know what that's like. So, I mean, they can like pick up their phone. They have iPhones. So they can pick up their phone and, you know, FaceTime a friend wherever. They have the ability to maintain connection with people through social media and stuff. And, you know, when we were kids, we didn't have that. But at the same time, I tell my kids that all this connection with social media, it's a wonderful thing, but it's also a double-edged sword because it keeps you away from like person-to-person conversation. You know, like the world has become this texting world, and it's just easier to write a text than to pick up a phone. I'm a phone call person. I don't need to do a FaceTime because I feel like I look like I'm 85 when I put the FaceTime thing up. You know, like Alyssa will FaceTime me, my daughter at college. I'll be like, "Good Lord, like put that thing back. Let me put it so I look like less wrinkly or something." But, you know, like, do you agree with that this next generation of kids are getting away from, you know, this person-to-person contact with lifting one another up in person? You know, I think that's why people want to come hear you speak, because they want to be brought into the fold. It's just different to do something and release it on, you know, a social media platform, because they're not always with you. That's why I wanted to do video for my podcast, because I wanted people to look at, you know, the body language and understand where it's coming from, because it comes from your heart. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed.
So what do you think about the kids today and like how things are different than for us when we were kids?
Yeah, it's so darn true, because we have access to so many tools that can do so much good, like the social media thing and FaceTime and all that other good stuff. And that limits the phone usage in terms of being able to call somebody up and be like, hey, it's Tyrone. Where's that money only from 1994?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of...
That's a good one. I probably should find my ledger from people that borrowed $20 off me to go someplace. No, but it's true. You have to kind of think about like how our times have morphed and how things are different than they were when we were growing up. But that was my thought on the whole pandemic, that these kids like have no idea like what we would have sat home, Dom, not seen our friends. I had a phone that had this long cord, and you would walk into your room and my mother would be like, your 10 minutes are up. I mean, these kids FaceTime for hours. Like they'll be on the phone. I'm like, my daughter will be doing something and she's on the phone, like on a FaceTime. I'm like, who are you FaceTiming with? I'm like, I'm trying to talk to you. And you're like on FaceTime. Oh, I'm just talking to so-and-so. But it's just such a different world. So I tell the long and the short of my story is that like these kids need to be like grateful for where they're at with what they have means to communicate with right now. So it's been a tough time for everybody. And it kind of leads me to my next question for you. There's been a lot of, and I don't want to talk about politics, and I don't want this to all be about like race relations, but I think the biggest thing that I want to hear from you is how can we be better people to one another? Because I think, we all matter. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. We all are wonderful people on the inside. And I just want to know, how can we all be better? Like, what is your advice for making the world a better place right now?
The key to that is butter. To definitely be better and not butter. No, I'm just messing with you. That's like a bad answer to that question. But seriously, though, really just valuing people and caring about one another, no matter what the race, no matter the age, no matter what the person is or what their rank is. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of like, the truth be told, I do have this belief that everyone is a leader. And depending on whether you're a good or a bad leader, that depends on who's following you and what you're doing. Because when you step out of the door of your home, you're a leader. When you get on the Zoom call, you're a leader because people interact with each other, even though it may be through different means and not the desired means of face-to-face, like person-to-person. Folks are still going to be watching and see what you're doing if you put yourself out there. And people are going to follow those who they may be drawn to. And really just getting back to, or should I say, amplifying what we need to do more of, and that's just valuing one another. Because if we value one another, no matter what the skin tone or anything is, we'll definitely be better as a people, as a collective whole, because that's what's been missing for decades to come.
Yeah.
And there's still pockets of it that have become more than just pockets. It's really just exploded because it's kind of like the whole racism thing. A lot of folks think that, hey, racism's dead, it doesn't exist. Well, no, these past few years, it's actually still been going around. It's just been so darn covert. It's kind of like it's been dressed up in a suit as opposed to overalls, in your face overalls on the farm, metaphorically. Now it's just in the suit where it's like, it's kind of like the whole mafia sort of thing, where it's like, it's corporate. It's all in a way where they're taking money out of a bank digitally, like through other means, as opposed to sticking you up face to face with the gun. So that's really my thoughts on it, just to value people and realize that no matter what, we all still bleed red. We all have blood. We all need to be hydrated.
Right.
We're all humans. We're all basically souls in a body. So have to keep that in mind.
Well, I appreciate you talking about it because, for me, it's been a hard topic because I care about everybody. And like the fact that there's so much divisiveness right now, it's hard. It's really hard to hear, and I want everybody, like I'm always of the mindset, I always tell my kids, do better, be better. What does that mean? It means be better to other people, do better for other people. And I think that has been a component that we're just missing. And I don't know, I think it comes down to individuals just saying, I am going to do better on all fronts of my life. And then if everybody said that to themselves and actually was actionable, because, words lay flat. It's what your actions are that make the difference in the world. And if everybody were to do that, I think we would be living in a better place. So I really appreciate you taking time to talk about that. So I always have my list of questions. So I had an interview earlier with Jen Taylor. I think you know her, the Naked podcaster.
I love that woman. She is fabulous and funny.
She is an absolute rip. And I asked her this question, and I just want to hear your answer to it also. Okay. It's kind of long, but
okay.
You're like, whatever. Okay. If in 100 years science fails to save us, okay, which right now we're kind of on the brink of that story, right? And all that is left is a book about your life. What would the title be? And what would the blurb tell us about Dominique Brightman? So what would the title of your book be? I mean, you already have 2 books. I'm talking about like, not like your motivational books. I'm like, what would like the book of your life say?
I like the book of my life to say incomplete yet immaculate. That would be the main title of the book, because no matter what happens, humans aren't perfect, but it's still perfect that I was still alive to at least contribute to society. And that's one of the main things I want to leave long after I'm gone, is that I have this podcast and these books out. That's one piece of me, but tend to leave more in this world. When I'm dead and I'm in that box, folks are going to know that Dom Brighton, he cared about people. He helped people. And he made sure that he gave it his all, no matter what.
Well, I can tell you, folks, I know Dom, and that is totally true. So I wanted to, you know how I always am finding my funny quotes. Like, you've been on my the Facebook page for Laughter and Inspiration, so you've been seeing like the funny things. I have to find. You know, I was laughing about this the other day because I'm always looking for funny things, and I like a little too much information. But like, my bedroom is right below my daughter's. So I'll lay in bed at night. I'm trying to find this thing I put. But anyway, I lay in bed at night and I think, oh my God, I got to find some funny things to say. And I look up all these funny sayings and I just crack up. Like, it's really, really funny, some of the things. And of course, I think I might have deleted it off my thing. Oh, no, I didn't. Good save, Constance. Okay, so when I hear Constance, I'm always in trouble. Like, if any of my friends go, Constance, I'm like, oh boy. Okay.
Government name, no.
Here we go. Well, you must feel like you get in trouble when someone calls you Dominique. Do you feel like that or not? Because everyone calls you Dom, right?
For the most part. It's actually a surprise that people actually call me Dominique and get it right. I'm like surprised. I'm like, oh, okay, wow. They said the whole name. Like, all right.
Yeah. I know how to speak, despite what people might think about me. Okay. Here's the quote. Okay. Some people manage stress with yoga. Not me. Meditation and a long walk. I manage stress with simple carbs, sarcasm, and swearing. How do you manage stress? Are you a yoga guy? Are you doing like the downward dog? And you mentioned to me something about some pigeon thing. What's the pigeon pose? Did you say that to me?
Yeah. I think I may have got the pose wrong. I think it was the crow pose.
Oh.
Either way, I basically had to put my knees on my elbows and then lean forward and put all the weight of my body on top of my 2 arms as good as I could and hold it. And that was like back when I was still doing Taekwondo. That mess was hellaciously hard.
You know what I call that? That's called a hot mess. I could never do that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you this other question. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, but not like promoting your books, like just some kind of saying, what would you have it say?
Billboard. You know what? On the billboard, I would have a nice little duck, and then out of the duck, it would say, "You are the quack."
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you what mine would say, okay? Now, this might be offensive to people with no hair, so I don't want it to seem that way. It's a kind of a play on something I went through. So when I had cancer, after like the summer of 2009 was when I was like on the mend. I was still like going through chemo, but by like the end of May, I was done. And I was bald as like you can be. and I was wearing a wig, and my brother had come up from North Carolina because I live in New York. He came up from North Carolina, and it reminded me of, you ever see the movie A Christmas Story, where the dogs eat the Christmas turkey and the dad comes down and he goes, "Get dressed, we're going out," right? So my brother comes up, he goes, "Get dressed, Con, we're going out." So I had, like, when you go through the breast cancer journey, you have expanders, and it's a very painful process. I'm not going to lie, but they like fill saline in your chest until you get to the point where you're happy, then you get implants. It's not like they take your breast tissue out, you get implants and call it a day, which is what I thought. I thought I was going to like have a home run in one surgery, but that's not how it goes. So anyway, I'm wearing my expanders, and I had like a little bit of a chest. I'm wearing a cute little sundress, had my wig on, and I'm walking down the streets of Saratoga Springs, New York, which is very busy, and we have the flat track there. So it's a very busy time of year in August. So we're walking down the street, and it's one of those streets where like the sidewalk is uneven and like roots are coming out and stuff. So I'm walking along wearing heels, and I noticed that this tree I'm coming up on is like kind of low. So I ducked my head, and I'm not even kidding you, my wig went off my head and like hung in the tree for just a moment, and then slowly floated down to the ground. And literally it was like this unbelievable slow motion thing. So I was with my brother, his then wife, and a couple of other friends. And they're standing there like this. They're like, they did not know what to say. I laughed. Have you ever laughed so hard that your head turns red? Like your head. So there I was, bald on the sidewalk, laughing. And I think like for me, my brother was like, "Shit, I wish we could have videotaped that. Like we would have won $100,000 from Tom Bergeron on, Funniest Home Videos." So, and it was before you had cell phone video. Like you would have had to get out like a camcorder. And we even talked about like, maybe we can recreate it. You can't, it would not have worked. It would not have worked. So anyway, my saying for my billboard based on that experience and just having to learn to laugh about that and laugh at myself would have been, keep your hair on. And I know like that would have been like a double meaning of like, keep yourself together, like don't lose it. But it would have shown like a bald person with the wig and been like, keep your hair on. That would have been mine. But that was like a little story from my book, which I have a lot of very funny stories in there because I'm a major smartass. So I know that you I am terrible. So you and I have spoken before about because I talked to you about it when I was on your podcast about keeping a gratitude journal and how important it is to live a life of gratitude. And it puts you in a positive mindset, much like what you're doing with your speaking engagements and just always exuding positivity. So what would be like the 3 things today that you're most grateful for?
Sure thing. So the first thing I would be grateful for would be having working arms and legs as well as eyesight. But then again, I guess that can count as 2 separate things because the limbs, they're separate and they're still working and everything. And the eyes themselves, being able to see face to face and to be able to see where I'm going is definitely a huge blessing indeed. Because a nice little book recommendation for those listening is a book called Prave, Prave. It's a story about a couple where it was the lady herself, her name was Priscilla. She was, I forgot what the condition was, but she was basically like, I stay around a good 3 feet tall her whole life, and she had brittle bones her whole life. And she was married to this man named Dave who was blind.
Oh, so Prave. That's where the name came. Okay. All right. I gotcha. I'm with you. Okay. So continue.
Oh, good. Don't want to lose you like the UFOs. Don't want to lose you. But yeah,
you're funny, Dom. So she can't. Which was it? He couldn't see or she couldn't see? Which one was which?
Nope, you had it right the first time. He couldn't see, so she was his eyes, and she wasn't tall, so he was basically her height. So they basically made up for each other's weaknesses, and it's a really touching and powerful story that's about helping others to be more open to the topic of accessibility, because accessibility is a huge thing that a lot of folks don't really put into perspective because, like with Dave himself, he talked a lot about how, since he's blind, people will put their arms out in front of him and try to block his way to make sure he's okay. But he's like, no, I know I'm going. I got my cane here, not my stick. I got my cane here, and just stuff like that. And the third thing to put this whole, you know what? The ability to read, that's another thing. So we'll put that as a third thing because some folks don't know how to read, whether that's by choice or by circumstance. And really just having that ability to be able to read and actually take in some knowledge from multiple sources and really have that advantage too. So those are the three things I'm grateful for: reading, eyesight, as well as working limbs.
I like that. Well, I will tell you a funny story about reading because, I like my funny stories.
Okay.
So when I graduated from college, I was having too much fun in college, so I did not do my biology degree, which was what I was going to. I wanted to go to medical school. So when I finished college, I went back to school, took all my prerequisite courses for medical school, and I had to do some volunteer work. So I was working at my parents' dealership, the car dealership. That's how I'm in the car business. And in the mornings, really early in the morning, I would go help this woman with Literacy Volunteers of America learn how to read. And she owned an Asian, Chinese restaurant. And, I think maybe like she was at a second grade reading level when I met her. So the funny story that I always tell about her, she was such a joyful lady. So I would go to her house at like 7:00 in the morning, 2 days a week. And we would read, a book that they gave me from Literacy Volunteers of America. And she would say, how you say, So I said, well, and as like a joke, I mean, I'm like 22, 23 at the time. And I said, well, because she was not an American citizen. So she did not grow up in our country. So she did not know like a lot of slang things that we reference. And, we have been a generation that references like, movie, moments and like TV shows. So I say to her, I said, one thing that we say is, what you talking about, Willis? Remember that show, Different Strokes?
That's
so
right.
I'd say, what you talking about, Willis? What's his name? Gary Coleman would say it like that. He was such a cute kid. And then, so I said that to her, right? So the next week I go back, she's reading this thing, and I read the first part of it, and she looks at me with her accent, and I don't want to be obnoxious and do it, but like she goes, what you talking about, Willis? And it was so funny, and we laughed. Like every time I would go, she would say that. But like I truly loved helping this woman learn how to read. It was an amazing gift to help her, because we take it for granted. Like we learn how to read as little kids, and it's just part of who we are. We don't realize that so many people, they may have dyslexia, so they can't read and see things the way that we see them, or they can't read at all. They never learned. And that's a pretty profound thing to realize about some people. And I really enjoyed teaching her how to read, and it was just such a rewarding thing. So I completely agree with you that it is a definite gift and a blessing, and we should all be grateful for the fact that we can read. So speaking of that, how can people read and get a hold of your book, and how do they find you and your podcast and all that? How do we find Dominique Brightman?
Yes, indeed. Feel free to head over to dombrightman.com, dombrightman.com. You can find all the stuff that I got going on there. And most of all, check out the Going North podcast, especially episode 201 with Fortitude Wins the Battle with Connie Bramer herself. Definitely check out that episode especially too.
Well, it's been an absolute joy to have you on my show, and I really am inspired by you, Dom. And I hope you know that you do inspire a lot of people with your words and your actions, and it means a lot. So if you want to learn more about Dom, and I call him Dom, not Dominique, but Dom, and, you know, maybe me and this episode in particular, you can go to check out the interactive show notes on speakingtotheheart.org. And, you know, I'm really blessed to be on this network because it is all about speaking to the heart, from, you know, my heart to your heart, from my guest heart to everyone else's heart. That's really what it's about. And it's been a real blessing to be on this network. So I want to thank you all for joining me on Laughter and Inspiration. I'm Connie Bramer, and I want to tell you, remember, it's important to always leave people better for having known you. And you know that, Tom, and you do it so well. So thanks for being on the show, and I'll catch you guys all next time.